The Bible mysteries that science can't explain. What if I told you that some of the most extraordinary events in the Bible still leave scientists scratching their heads? That even with all our modern technology, advanced research, and breakthroughs in physics, medicine, and archaeology, there are mysteries in the Bible that simply defy explanation. Think about it. How did the Red Sea really part? What caused a city to be destroyed by fire from the sky? Did a giant flood actually cover the earth? And perhaps the greatest question of all, did Jesus really rise from the dead? See, science loves to explain things. It thrives on logic, proof, and facts. But when it comes to the Bible, there are events, artifacts, and supernatural occurrences that refuse to be put into neat little boxes. Some things aren't just hard to explain, they are downright impossible. And that's what we're talking about today. The Bible mysteries that science can't explain. Some of these will make you think. Some will challenge everything you believe. And some, well, they might just strengthen your faith in ways you never expected. So, are you ready? Let's dive in. Section 1. The Shroud of Turin, the image of Christ? All right, let's start with one of the most mysterious artifacts in human history, the Shroud of Turin. This ancient linen cloth is believed by millions to be the actual burial shroud of Jesus Christ. Why? Because on it, faintly burned into the fabric, is the image of a man who appears to have been crucified. A man with wounds on his wrists and feet, a gash in his side, and marks that eerily match the suffering of Jesus described in the Gospels. But here's where it gets really weird. For over a century, scientists have examined this cloth, trying to understand how the image got there. And guess what? No one can explain it. It's not paint. There are no brush strokes, no pigment, nothing that suggests an artist created it. It's not a burn. The image isn't made of any known substance. It seems to be scorched onto the fabric at a microscopic level. It's not a simple photographic negative. In 1898, when the first photographs were taken of the shroud, the image actually became clearer, as if the real image is hidden in the negative. And then came the carbon dating tests in 1988. Scientists confidently declared the shroud was from the Middle Ages, around 1260–1390 AD. Case closed, right? Wrong. New studies have debunked that carbon dating, showing the sample was taken from a section of the shroud that was contaminated with medieval repairs. Other research suggests the shroud could be 2,000 years old, placing it right in the time of Christ. But the biggest mystery: no one, not even modern science, can reproduce the image on the shroud. Even today, with our advanced lasers, imaging technology, and knowledge of chemistry, we can't recreate how the image was formed. So, the question remains, is this really the image of Jesus Christ? A supernatural imprint left at the moment of resurrection? Or is it something else, something even science can't begin to understand? One thing is for sure. The mystery of the Shroud of Turin is far from solved. Section 2. The Tower of Babel. A lost civilization? Now let's go back to the ancient world, to a story that explains why humanity speaks so many languages today. The Tower of Babel. The Bible tells us that once, long ago, all of humanity spoke the same language. There were no barriers, no miscommunication, no need for translators. People worked together, building a civilization unlike any other. Then, they decided to do something bold. They said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens." Genesis 11:4. Their goal? To be like God, to elevate themselves beyond the limits of humanity. And then something happened. The Bible says that God saw their pride and said, If as one people speaking the same language they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. And with that, God confused their language. Suddenly, no one could understand each other. The great project collapsed. People scattered across the world, forming new nations, new cultures, and new languages. Now let's pause. Is this just a symbolic story, or could there be scientific truth behind it? Consider this. Linguists and historians don't fully understand how human language originated. There is no clear evolutionary explanation for how different languages suddenly emerged across ancient civilizations. Even more fascinating, some scholars believe there was once a single universal language, one lost to history. Could the Bible's account of Babel be describing a real event? And here's something even crazier. Archaeologists have discovered the ruins of an ancient, unfinished ziggurat, stepped pyramid, in Babylon, in modern-day Iraq. This structure, called Etemenanki, was believed to be a temple dedicated to the god Marduk. Some researchers believe this could be the real Tower of Babel, a monument to human pride, abandoned after a great and sudden disruption. But here's the real mystery. What really happened at Babel? Did humanity once share one language? And if so, what force, whether divine or something else, caused the sudden fragmentation of human speech? Science can guess. Linguists can speculate. But no one can explain why languages changed so suddenly in ancient times. The Bible gives an answer. Science, still searching. Section 3. The Parting of the Red Sea. A Miraculous Escape. Now, let's talk about one of the most epic moments in biblical history, the parting of the Red Sea. It's a story so dramatic, so impossible, that it has been debated for centuries. Did Moses really part an entire sea, allowing the Israelites to escape Pharaoh's army? The Bible says that after Pharaoh finally let the Israelites go, he had a change of heart. He sent his army, chariots, soldiers, and all, to chase them down. The Israelites, trapped between the Red Sea and the Egyptian military, had nowhere to go. And then, the impossible happened. Exodus 14:21 says, "Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord drove the sea back by a strong east wind all night, and made the sea dry land, and the waters were divided." The Israelites crossed on dry ground, with towering walls of water on either side. When Pharaoh's army pursued them, the waters came crashing down, wiping them out completely. Now, here's where it gets interesting. For centuries, scientists have tried to explain this seemingly impossible event. Some theories include wind set-down effect. A powerful wind could have pushed water back, exposing land temporarily. Tsunami theory. A sudden seismic shift could have caused waters to recede and return violently. Reed Sea, not Red Sea. Some suggest the translation was wrong and that the Israelites crossed a shallow marsh. But here's the problem. None of these theories explain the precision of the event. The waters parted exactly when Moses raised his staff. The Israelites had enough time to cross. The water collapsed at just the right moment, swallowing the Egyptian army. Coincidence or divine intervention? And here's another mystery. Divers and researchers claim to have found underwater chariot wheels in the Gulf of Aqaba, a possible crossing site. Could this be evidence of the event? One thing's for sure, science has theories, but no solid proof. The Red Sea miracle remains one of the most unexplainable events in history. Section 4. Sodom and Gomorrah. Fire from the heavens. Now let's talk about the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, a story so shocking that it still haunts the pages of history. Genesis 19 describes these two ancient cities as places of wickedness and corruption. God sends two angels to rescue Lot and his family before unleashing a fiery judgment from the sky. Genesis 19:24 says, Then the Lord rained down burning sulfur on Sodom and Gomorrah from the Lord out of the heavens. The cities were completely obliterated. Smoke rose from the land like a furnace. Nothing remained. Now here's the million-dollar question. Did this really happen? Archaeologists believe they may have found the actual sites of Sodom and Gomorrah near the modern-day Dead Sea, and here's where it gets eerie. At a site called Tal el-Hammam, researchers discovered something astonishing. Evidence of a sudden, high-temperature destruction. Charred ruins, melted pottery, and human remains burned beyond recognition. A layer of ash containing sulfur and salt, consistent with the biblical account. But the craziest part? A 2021 scientific study suggests that the destruction was caused by an airburst, a massive explosion in the sky similar to the 1908 Tunguska event in Siberia. In other words, a cosmic firestorm, exactly like the Bible describes. Scientists estimate that a meteor or comet exploded over the city, generating temperatures hotter than the surface of the sun. This would explain the sudden obliteration of everything, the intense heat that melted stone and pottery. The layer of salt, possibly from the Dead Sea being vaporized. Coincidence? Or was this God's judgment? The Bible describes an event that seemed impossible, fire raining from the sky. Science now confirms it happened. But what caused it? A random cosmic accident? Or something far greater? Whatever the case, Sodom and Gomorrah remain one of the most terrifying and unexplainable events in ancient history. Section 5. The Great Flood and Noah's Ark. A global catastrophe? All right, let's talk about one of the most debated events in biblical history, the Great Flood. The story of Noah's Ark is one of the most famous accounts in the Bible. God sees the wickedness of humanity and decides to cleanse the earth with a massive flood. But he chooses one righteous man, Noah, and tells him to build a giant ark to save his family and 2 of every kind of animal. Genesis 7:11-12 says, "On that day all the fountains of the great deep burst forth, and the windows of the heavens were opened. And rain fell upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights. The result? A worldwide catastrophe. Mountains were covered in water. Every living thing outside the ark perished. After 150 days, the waters began to recede, and the ark came to rest on Mount Ararat." Now, here's the big question. Did this really happen? Scientists and historians have debated this story for centuries. Some say it's just a myth, but others believe there's real evidence of a massive ancient flood. Scientific theories on the flood. The Black Sea Deluge hypothesis. Some researchers believe a catastrophic flood occurred around 5000 BC, when the Mediterranean Sea overflowed into the Black Sea, drowning vast amounts of land. Could this be the basis for the Noah's Ark story? Worldwide flood myths. Nearly every ancient culture has a flood story. From Mesopotamian texts like the Epic of Gilgamesh to Native American legends, flood myths are everywhere. Why would civilizations across the world, separated by time and geography, all tell the same kind of story? Geological evidence. Fossils of marine life have been found on mountaintops, including the Himalayas. Could this suggest massive flooding in the ancient past? And let's not forget about the Ark itself. The search for Noah's Ark. Mount Ararat in Turkey is traditionally believed to be the Ark's resting place. Over the years, explorers have reported sightings of large wooden structures buried in ice. Satellite images and ground-penetrating radar have picked up anomalies deep in the mountain. Could the Ark still be there, waiting to be uncovered? Here's the real mystery. Even if science can explain some ancient floods, the precision of the Bible's account, the animals, the timing, the specific measurements of the Ark, remains a puzzle. Did God preserve Noah and his family through a divine intervention? Or was this just a legend with a grain of truth? Science has theories, but it doesn't have answers. Section 6. The Long Day of Joshua. When the sun stood still now, this one is mind-blowing. The Bible describes an event so impossible that even NASA scientists have looked into it. In the book of Joshua, we find a battle where God performs one of the greatest miracles recorded in Scripture. He makes the sun stand still. Joshua 10:12-13 says, Then Joshua spoke to the Lord in the day when the Lord delivered up the Amorites before the children of Israel. And he said in the sight of Israel, Sun, stand still over Gibeon, and moon in the valley of Ajalon. So the sun stood still, and the moon stopped, till the people had revenge upon their enemies. In other words, time froze. The sun didn't set. The battle continued until Israel won. Now, let's pause. How is that even possible? If the earth suddenly stopped spinning, physics tells us that everything would be thrown into chaos. The atmosphere would keep moving, causing massive tsunamis and destruction. Yet, the Bible says this happened without disaster. Scientific theories on Joshua's long-day astronomical event. Some scientists suggest it could have been a solar eclipse or some kind of atmospheric refraction that made the sun appear to stay in place. But an eclipse wouldn't have lasted an entire day. The missing day theory. A famous story claims that NASA scientists once discovered a missing day in time while making astronomical calculations. While this claim is debated, it keeps resurfacing, raising the question, did something really happen? A slowing of the Earth's rotation. Some physicists suggest that a supernatural force could have slowed Earth's rotation for a period of time without causing destruction. But here's the problem. There is no known scientific mechanism that could do this without catastrophic consequences. The mystery remains. Joshua's long day shouldn't have been possible, yet the Bible records it as a real event. If this was just a myth, why does other ancient literature describe similar occurrences? Could God have supernaturally altered time itself? Science can't explain it. The event defies logic, physics, and everything we know about the natural world. Was this a miracle, or something we may never fully understand? Section 7. The Nephilim, Giants Among Men. Now let's talk about one of the most mysterious and controversial figures in the Bible, the Nephilim. The Bible describes these beings in Genesis 6:4. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of men and had children by them. They were the heroes of old, men of renown. Wait a minute. Who, or what, were the Nephilim? According to the text, these were the offspring of fallen angels and human women. They were described as giants, warriors, and beings of immense power. Some believe they were the inspiration for the titans of Greek mythology or the demigods of ancient legends. But here's the real question. Did they actually exist? Scientific and historical evidence of giants. Ancient skeletons of giants. Throughout history, unusually large skeletons have been discovered, some reportedly measuring 9 to 15 feet tall. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, newspapers reported on giant bones being unearthed in North America, Europe, and the Middle East. Some of these findings mysteriously disappeared, leading to conspiracy theories that they were covered up to protect mainstream scientific narratives. The Book of Enoch's account. The Book of Enoch, an ancient Jewish text, not included in the modern Bible, gives even more details about the Nephilim. It describes how fallen angels, the Watchers, descended to earth, took human wives, and gave birth to monstrous offspring who corrupted the world. According to Enoch, these giants were so wicked that God sent the great flood to wipe them out, which ties into Noah's story. Legends across cultures. Many ancient civilizations have legends of giant beings who once roamed the earth. The Sumerians spoke of the Anunnaki, divine beings who mixed with humans. The Greeks told stories of the Titans, powerful half-gods who ruled before Zeus overthrew them. The Native American Paiute tribe in Nevada has stories of the red-haired giants who lived in caves and had to be fought off by their ancestors. The mystery remains. If the Nephilim were just a myth, why do so many ancient texts and cultures describe giant beings with supernatural origins? And if they were real, what happened to them? Did they all die in the flood? Or could some still exist today, hidden from the modern world? One thing is certain: science can't explain the persistent evidence of ancient giants. Were the Nephilim real creatures of flesh and blood? Or were they something even stranger, beings that walked the line between heaven and earth? Section 8. Jesus' Miracles, Beyond Human Understanding. All right, now let's talk about something even more mysterious: the miracles of Jesus Christ. No matter what you believe, one thing is undeniable: Jesus changed history forever. He didn't just teach and preach. He performed miracles that left people in awe, shook religious leaders, and even made scientists today ask questions they can't answer. Let's break down 3 of his most mind-blowing miracles that science still struggles to explain. 1. Healing the sick and raising the dead. Throughout the Gospels, Jesus healed the blind, made the paralyzed walk, cured leprosy, and even raised the dead. For example, in John 11, Jesus raises Lazarus, a man who had been dead for 4 days. 4 days. His body would have already started decomposing. But when Jesus called him out of the tomb, Lazarus walked out alive. Science tells us that once a body starts decaying, there's no coming back. So how did this happen? Some skeptics claim it was misdiagnosed death, but in ancient Jewish burial customs, a person was wrapped, anointed, and entombed within hours. No one would bury a living person. Others suggest it was a metaphor, but the account describes actual people witnessing the event. So, was it a medical impossibility or a divine act of power? 2. Walking on water. One of the most famous miracles of Jesus was when he walked on water. Matthew 14:25-26 says, "Shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them, walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified." Now science completely rejects the idea that any human can walk on water. The density and surface tension simply don't allow it. Some theories have been proposed. It was an illusion. But the disciples were experienced fishermen. They knew what deep water looked like. He walked on ice. But this was the Sea of Galilee, where temperatures don't get cold enough for solid ice. Jesus had knowledge of unknown physics. Could he have controlled matter at a quantum level? Science offers no real explanation. So, did Jesus defy the laws of physics? Or did he show us that our understanding of reality is incomplete? 3. Turning water into wine. This is Jesus' first recorded miracle in the Bible, found in John 2. At a wedding in Cana, the wine runs out. Jesus instructs the servants to fill jars with water, and suddenly, the water becomes fine wine. Here's what makes this so incredible. Wine isn't just flavored water. It requires fermentation, time, and chemical transformation. Jesus did it instantly. The host at the wedding even said it was better wine, suggesting not just transformation, but improvement. Now science has studied ways to speed up fermentation, but instantaneous transformation of molecular structures is beyond anything we know. So, how did Jesus do it? Some scientists speculate about matter manipulation, changing the chemical composition of a substance at will. But let's be real. No scientist on Earth has figured out how to turn water into fine wine with a single command. The mystery of Jesus' miracles. Jesus' miracles aren't just supernatural, they challenge the very laws of nature. He healed when no cure was possible. He walked on water, defying gravity. He transformed elements, something modern science still struggles with. Were these divine acts? Or did Jesus operate with knowledge and power far beyond human comprehension? Even today, scientists, historians, and skeptics have no definitive explanations. One thing is certain: no one else in history has performed miracles like these. Could it be proof that Jesus was who he claimed to be, the Son of God? Section 9. The Ark of the Covenant, a power beyond science. Now, let's talk about one of the most mysterious and powerful artifacts ever mentioned in the Bible, the Ark of the Covenant. This wasn't just a golden box. According to the Bible, it was the physical manifestation of God's presence on earth. The Ark was built under God's instructions and housed the 10 Commandments, Aaron's staff, and a jar of manna. But it wasn't just a relic, it had unbelievable power. The supernatural abilities of the Ark. It was deadly to touch. In 2 Samuel 6:6-7, a man named Uzzah reached out to steady the Ark when it was falling and instantly dropped dead. Why? Was this a divine punishment, or did the Ark contain some kind of deadly energy? It brought victory in battle. When Israel carried the Ark into war, they were unstoppable. In Joshua 6, the Ark was used in the Battle of Jericho, where the walls of the city collapsed after 7 days of marching around it. How did this happen? Could it have emitted a force that caused the walls to crumble? It could bring plagues and destruction. When the Philistines captured the Ark, they suffered horrific plagues and tumors. They were so terrified that they returned it to Israel. Was this divine punishment, or something more mysterious? Scientific theories about the Ark. The Ark as an energy weapon. Some researchers suggest the Ark functioned as an ancient capacitor, capable of storing massive electrical energy. The gold plating inside and out could have conducted electricity, creating lethal shocks. The Ark and radioactivity. Some speculate the Ark may have contained radioactive materials, which could explain why people who touched it or were near it fell ill or died. Could this be why God instructed the Israelites to carry it on poles instead of touching it directly? A connection to extraterrestrial technology? Some believe the Ark was not of human origin, but an artifact of divine or even extraterrestrial intervention. Its abilities seem too advanced for an object built thousands of years ago. Where is the Ark today? Here's the real mystery. The Ark has disappeared. Some claim it's hidden under the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. Others say it was taken to Ethiopia, where it's secretly kept in a church. And then there's the theory that it was lost forever, perhaps even taken by God himself. One thing is certain. Science cannot explain the Ark's power. Was it truly the dwelling place of God on earth? Or was it a mysterious device with knowledge far beyond ancient understanding? Section 10. The Resurrection of Jesus, the Greatest Mystery. Now let's talk about the most extraordinary, debated, and powerful event in all of history, the resurrection of Jesus Christ. For over 2,000 years, this event has been the foundation of Christianity. Jesus was crucified, buried in a tomb, and then, 3 days later, he rose from the dead. But here's the question. Did it really happen? The biblical account of the resurrection Jesus was publicly executed, beaten, crucified, stabbed in the side. His body was placed in a sealed tomb, guarded by Roman soldiers. On the third day, the tomb was empty. His followers claimed to see him alive, not as a ghost, but in physical form. Over 500 people witnessed him alive over 40 days. Now let's break this down. Scientific and historical problems with the resurrection, the empty tomb. If Jesus didn't rise, where was his body? The Jewish and Roman leaders had every reason to display his body to stop Christianity from spreading, but they couldn't. If the disciples stole the body, how did they get past elite Roman guards? The transformation of the disciples. After Jesus' death, his followers were scared, in hiding, fearing for their lives. Then suddenly, they were fearless, preaching that Jesus had risen, despite knowing they would be killed for saying it. People don't die for something they know is a lie. Modern medical studies on crucifixion. Roman crucifixion was brutal. A person didn't survive it. Some skeptics say Jesus faked his death, but modern medical knowledge proves this is impossible. He suffered massive blood loss, organ failure, and a spear wound to the heart. If he somehow survived, he wouldn't have appeared fully healed 3 days later. The Shroud of Turin, a resurrection clue. Remember the Shroud of Turin from Section 1? Some believe the mysterious image on the cloth was created by a burst of divine energy at the moment of resurrection. No one can explain how the image got there. Alternative theories about the resurrection. The hallucination theory. Some skeptics claim the disciples were so grief-stricken that they imagined Jesus alive. But 500 people saw him. Hallucinations don't happen to entire groups at the same time. The stolen body theory. If the disciples stole the body, how did they get past Roman soldiers? Why would they die for a lie? The spiritual resurrection theory. Some say Jesus' resurrection was symbolic, not physical. But the Bible states he ate food, people touched him, and he had a physical body. The mystery that science can't solve. The resurrection of Jesus is the most studied, analyzed, and debated event in religious history. And yet, no historian, scientist, or skeptic has been able to fully explain what happened. If Jesus really rose from the dead, then that means life doesn't end at death. Jesus was exactly who he said he was, the Son of God. Everything changes. This is the ultimate mystery that science cannot explain. Conclusion: faith versus science, the coexistence of mystery and belief. We've covered 10 of the greatest Bible mysteries, each one defying logic, history, and science. The Shroud of Turin, the Tower of Babel, the parting of the Red Sea, the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, the Great Flood, the sun, standing still, the Nephilim, the miracles of Jesus, the Ark of the Covenant, the resurrection of Christ. Some will say these are just stories, myths, or exaggerations. Others believe they are proof of the divine. But here's the truth: science does not have all the answers. Some mysteries may never be solved. And maybe, just maybe, that's because they were never meant to be. So the question remains: do you believe?